Hi, and welcome to Two Tired Teachers.
And we are super excited because we are getting ready to head out on our first long trip of 2020. Now,
Yes.
when we say long trip, we've stayed in the state of Texas, so we've taken some trips that were 300 miles from home, but we were still in Texas. But we are getting ready to, just going to say it,
Yeah.
head to South Dakota. And so, as we've been making the preparations and the plans for this trip,
We've had lots of questions we had to ask ourselves.
and a lot of things we've had to consider. And this being August, we'll be leaving September of 2020. The first question we've asked is it safe?
Before Sturgis, South Dakota had 15 cases of COVID.
And we're sure that's gone up some, but knowing that about the destination, and then we have taken some short trips well, when I say short trips, this is the shortest one and it's 9 nights. I think, but we've traveled in May, June, July, and August, and kind of gotten a rhythm of this is how we fill up with gas. This is, our grocery shopping before we go, every 2 weeks, and we've kind of gotten into a system of where we can do things and feel relatively safe.
Yes.
Hopefully, if you're watching this in a year or two, all of that's a moot point. But some other things we've considered.
First of all, we knew where we wanted to go. We just didn't know if we wanted to focus on the journey or on the destination.
And so finding that place or places you want to go, and that's going to be a big question. Because it's pretty good distance from Central Texas to South Dakota, ultimately we have to keep our eye on that destination.
Yes.
But not at the expense of the journey.
And we do have some stops along the way that we want to make.
Now, the very first one we are super excited about. We are getting to go see our aunt who is 96 years old. We haven't seen her since February. We had no idea that would be.
Yes.
We've never been this long without visiting her. She and our mother were very close, and so all of our lives we've seen Aunt Ruth and her family regularly. And so
She still lives alone.
she's 96, and
That's our first stop on this trip.
Absolutely. So that's something, sometimes as you're going on these trips, there may be that stop you really not just want to, but need to make. And so be sure that you add an opportunity to make those. And then just some fun stuff. I may never get to the Statue of Liberty. Well, evidently there is a miniature Statue of Liberty on the way. And so I figure, hey, why not take a few minutes and stop?
Theo's kind of a little dog, and I thought he needed to go to the big dog statue park thing on 35 on the way up in Oklahoma.
And one other, and we don't need to tell you all of these, but our good friend and Sailor Award-winning author Vicki Castell, the first books that we read of hers were the Prairie Heritage series, and they were set in Nebraska. And so we want to see that part of the
Yes.
state and where that all took place. And so we are going to, instead of just head north and a little bit west, we're going to head north and a little bit east to see that, because that to us is worth that making that detour. But knowing where it is you're planning on going, and asking yourself, what are these things we need to stop and see along the way? And then
take some preparation.
And then a big question that may be set for you, and that is, how long do you have?
Yes.
Because that may say, well, we've got to cut this out, or we need to, and kind of prioritize what those things are. But how long do you have? And then not just along the way, but when you get there, what are the things to see?
And I want to mention here, for those of you traveling with, with kids or grandkids, if at all possible, let them help make some of those decisions. narrow down their choices. Now we could go see this, 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 and this, and let each of them pick one thing they would like to do so that they have a stake in the trip.
And for us, yes, we're old school, but for me, one of the things that really helps is as we're looking forward to this months ahead of time, and in some cases years ahead of time because we had already ordered materials for other trips that got canceled. But having the travel information from that location is helpful, and for me, seeing it in print.
Yes.
And so we had ordered material from South Dakota. They're going to send you a state map, which is going to be. We have a story about a detour where we didn't have a state map, and
We
the
drove
detour
in circles for a good long while.
the detour was happy to tell us that oversized loads couldn't go across this bridge, but they never told us how to get across the Tennessee River. And so having a state map would have been really helpful at that point. But getting the material from South Dakota, there's a map that's inside of one of the books that is actually a blow-up of the exact area we're going to be focusing on. And not only is it a map of the roads, it also marks where all of the low underpasses are. And so pulling a trailer, even though ours is just 10.5 feet tall, knowing where those areas
There
are.
are some we cannot get under at 10.5 feet. So if you're driving something that's 12 or 15, you definitely want that.
But seeing that insert, and so you never know. And then also on, they have maps that show not just the destinations we already knew about, but in this area there are all of these things. Which of these things do we want to go and see? And so getting that material ahead of time, and for us, that's part of the fun of the trip is planning it. But what is there to see in that area, and what of that do we want to see? This is going to be my third trip, actually. I've been to Southwest, South Dakota twice, once with our mom, and then Mylene and I went, and both times that I've been there, I wished I could camp because it was before we had an RV, and I just was looking at the area going, this is gorgeous. I wish I could just stop here and take it all in, what we're going to.
Yes.
And so that brings up another question. Where are you going to stay?
And do you need reservations?
And those are going to be dependent on when are you going? And so there's a lot to think about there. And with the where are you going to stay, is it going to be one place, or are you going to go to several different places? In other words, are you going to have somewhere that's really central and then use that as a hub
Base, yeah.
and a spoke, or are there concentrated areas over here where you could make a loop here, and that's more what we're going to be doing, and then over here and make a loop around there? So kind of planning that out. And do you need reservations? Well, if you are limited to specifically, we have to leave on this date and we have to return on this date, peace of mind, I would say get reservations. And if you're going in peak season, reservations would be much more advised.
Early.
And sorry if you can hear that, my dog wants to be out here. But peak season, a general umbrella for much of the country is peak season is Memorial Day to Labor Day. It's not exact, and that's not a perfect fit for everywhere, but that's general. If you can make shoulder season, and shoulder season is like April and May or September and October, then you're going to be a lot more likely to get some of those first come first serve sites. And so it really depends on your situation. And then, like we said, looking at what it is that you and your family want to do when you get there, where you want to stay, what things are going to be important to you. And our suggestion is, if you can, add some flexibility, add some down days. For us, that is a big deal. This is an example. This day is not turning out. We're getting ready to leave here. We're close to home, but we've been getting up between 6:30 and 7:15 every morning. I've been walking the dog, doing all kinds of stuff. Got up this morning, it was 9:30.
We were tired.
But planning some flexibility in there, so if you get up there and find out, oh, there was this really neat thing to do,
And we missed it.
then you've got a little bit of flexibility to go do that. There are some things that, not just campsites, but there may be some things that you would need reservations for ahead of time. An example, we went in Wind Cave when we were up there last time. It was great. We loved it. Right now, we're not going in really in closed spaces with strangers.
And you have to ride an elevator down to the entrance of Wind Cave.
But there are also tours in Wind Cave that are smaller, where you're actually crawling through openings, etc., and stuff like that. And I think those you have to have. It's a smaller group, etc., so you might need reservations if that's something that you want to do. So looking into those things before you get up there or wherever it is that you're going. And then, just as a suggestion, something that we have found very helpful is if you can take a short dry run, just take a short trip
Yes.
before you take the long one. It's going to help you with a lot of things.
That's basically what this trip has turned out to be.
And it gave us, we have reached the point that we do enjoy some boondocking and dry camping. Not in Texas in August. We need some AC. But this has given us a chance to get the freshwater tank sanitized, etc. And not only that, it lets you see, is there something that needs to be tweaked, that needs to be fixed, etc. An example, our freshwater drain. When I got under there to drain some of the highly diluted bleach water out from there, there was a little tip on the end that broke off. Now I can still turn it, but that told me that piece is getting worn. It's getting dried out, it's getting etc. We don't want to be on a trip that's 4 weeks long and
That's
find
dependent on fresh water.
freshwater tank and find out that that's not working. So, because we're here, we're close to home, etc., we were able to go to a hardware store and get something that will work. And it was an inexpensive fix to get something that will help, that will hold that fresh water. I'd taken a picture of the plug, etc., and we're going to carry that with us. Hopefully we're not going to need it, but peace of mind is we have that. The other thing is we are blessed. We do get to travel quite a bit. Like I said, we've traveled in May, June, July, and August. We've taken some little trips. Each of those have had 3 or 4 stops, and so we've done lots of hitching and unhitching and backing and setting up and all of that. But if you don't get to take trips that often, this pre-trip is going to let you knock some of the cobwebs off.
And remind you, oh yeah, when you hitch, you gotta do this.
And yeah, we need to make sure that we store this here so that it's not, and it kind of gives you that dry run of getting back into RVing again.
Yes.
And like I said, we've taken a lot of trips, and yet this trip, planning specifically for that next long trip, we have, and not only that, it's allowed us to do deep cleaning, where you take, like I said, we need air conditioning in August to plan for this trip, and we've been able to take everything out of every shelf, out of every drawer,
Out of the pantry.
wipe down the cabinets, all of those things in preparation. See what are we going to need so far as pantry items, etc., to help us through this longer trip. And so these are questions that we've been asking ourselves as we've planned for this long trip, and we just thought that we would go on and share some of those. And if you have other things that you do as you prepare for long trips, If you would leave those comments for us, because we like to get as much information
Yes.
as we possibly can. And then one last thing that we're trying to do, and that is, if at all possible, yes, it's my brain is let's plan, or I could show you a spreadsheet of all the places we're going with links to their websites and the distances between. That's my brain, that's how I work. But there are going to be things that are going to cause us to have to be a little bit flexible, and when those things come up, everybody on that trip is going to be a little bit frustrated, and everybody taking it just kind of rolling in stride is going to help.
Yes.
And anyway, we are excited, and we hope that you will look forward to seeing our travels in our journey to get to South Dakota, and then
Because we want to show you that big statue dog park.
we know now you are really curious. But anyway, we are going to be having a series of videos about our travel to South Dakota, and I sure hope we're not having to show you a whole lot of flexibility. Thanks for watching
Two Tired Teachers.